Let's do this. This is a fun little thing we do.
We're going to do it together?
Yes. That's how we do it every week, Holly.
Together, but apart in two different states.
This is Slip Into the Night, episode 5. Initiation Rituals. In this episode, Holly and I dive into the deep end of the hot tub pool, naked.
Really?
Join us on our sexcapade.
Wow. This was not part of the pre-show chat.
No.
What are you suggesting?
Yeah. That hot tubs are great. No, Holly had suggested the topic of initiation rituals, which I've actually I haven't had a ton of experience with. However, I've had quite a few discussions on the subject and on the matter and what they are and what they mean and what they do for the initiate and or the teacher, educator, whatever you might want to call the person doing the initiating. But initiation rituals can also be done in a solitary fashion as well. And they're not relegated to just one thing. They cross many boundaries, be it spiritually, religious, religions. There are many different types of belief systems that use initiation rituals. But I thought it was definitely a cool subject for us to delve into. So my hat's off to you, Holly.
Well, I think it is one of those things that is somewhat misunderstood, or there's lots of different ways to do it. So it's, in some ways, it's one of those things that maybe on the mainstream or popular culture misunderstands it or misrepresents it. So I thought it was something that we could talk a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, you don't have any direct experience with any kind of initiations, or do you?
Well, as far as in a group, no.
Mm-hmm.
As far as in a solitary nature, then yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Trying to reach my tissues. They're too far away. There they are. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have had experience in so much as that I have delved into certain practices where you a lot of these things are very tiered.
Mm-hmm.
You learn one thing and then you progress on. If you follow any of the teachings of the Golden Dawn, excuse me. Most forms of ritual magic, it's all very tier based. Wicca, not so much, I don't think. Although they do have initiation rituals, but I've never seen Wicca as tier based, or witchcraft for that matter. But I've never done any deep delving into it either. Any great serious research. So
Right. So what I do know is, so lots of cultures and different religious and spiritual groups all kind of have their own different forms of initiations, which may be more of a structured ritual or it may not be. And it doesn't even need to be a functionally spiritual group. There's a lot of, like, in tribal cultures, initiations into, like, say, different age groups, like a rite of passage into adulthood that may undergo some kind of ritual where you have to either prove yourself or maybe go on to like a 3-day journey into the wilderness.
right.
And where that is at least partially to get like a vision quest, which is a type of initiation where, like in a lot of North American indigenous cultures, um, the young adult would go out and fend for themselves out into the wilderness for 3 days or something, and try to promote this kind of vision that is kind of initiating them into what, like their next phase of their life. And a lot of these, whatever it is these initiation acts are kind of a intersection somehow with kind of a more spiritual component to promote this kind of stepping into a new experience.
Hmm.
Um, so I've never been on a vision quest, so I can't actually really speak to that. Although I realize that that is one that is linked to a certain age group. There may be other rituals that involve pain, like tattooing or piercing, or things like circumcision is a type of initiation where you undergo a physical alteration to meet kind of the needs
To
of
ruin your penis.
yeah, depending on your perspective of it,
I
you
want
know.
my foreskin back, damn it. I didn't get any choice in that matter.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of men don't have any
And
choice in that matter.
and here's the thing, like, I regret taking my sons.
You do?
I do, like, I regret being part of that decision, although I didn't get much choice in the matter. I regret not throwing more of a stink about that. Because it's natural. It's the way it was intended, and why should we change it? You
Mhm.
know? Anybody that I've talked to that has a normal fucking penis that hasn't been circumcised is like, "Yeah, you just gotta fucking clean the goddamn thing." You know? It's not
Mhm.
they're like, "You wash yours?" I'm like, "Yeah, fucking then it's fucking normal."
Mhm.
You
Right.
know?
Yes.
That you might have to be a little bit more diligent about some things, but fuck yeah, I wish I had mine back. Hell
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. But functionally speaking, that is, in that case, it's a little bit about having to do with, hygiene and cleanliness and being part of a specific culture that they practice that. And
Mhm.
so that is something that's done. That's the same thing with, it's very frowned upon on Western cultures, but female circumcision is still practiced in some parts of the world where they are taking the clitoris
Oh, that's horrible.
and it is, most Western cultures view that as basically mutilation. But it is one of these rites that involves pain and undergoing kind of an event to
Yeah,
create a
you could call it an event.
yeah, to mark the change of life status from one place to another.
Hmm.
Usually, it is not that extreme. I think tattooing in some cultures is also part of a ritual or initiation type of
Oh, yeah.
practice.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's even used in, like, gang culture,
yes.
like, where certain people have certain tattoos that they get, you
In
know,
prison culture
the
too, like
prison culture as well, yeah. That's all type of initiation type stuff,
hmm
you know, being recognized,
yes.
being recognized as this thing. Now, in the places that we're talking about it, like in ritual magic or, in the druidic traditions or Wicca or witchcraft or shamans or whatever the case may be, these initiation rituals are more ritual based. Like this isn't about just like getting something put on you or whatever. It's about performing some type of ritual and having intention and preparing to go into this thing or to the next level or whatever the case may be. They even do it in Scientology, for fuck's sake. Only you got to pay.
Right. So, like, for me, my personal experience with it is when I've been doing some of my more shamanic studies, there have been ceremonial components that you have, where I've undergone certain initiations. So there's, you know, where you've worked with a kind of, where in my case, I worked with a teacher shaman who then passed, this initiation on to me, and it was more of a ceremonial blessing type of a thing. Um, that kind of marked that I had done a certain amount of like inner work.
Right.
But in shamanism, you can have at least the kind that I follow, which is like this more of the South American, indigenous shamanism. You can have spontaneous initiations um, of various kinds, and some of those in some things that are in that bracket of spontaneous initiations can be like a severe illness or a trauma. One of the big ones in the Andes is getting hit by lightning or almost being drowned and surviving a drowning. You don't have to go through those things to become to do that, but that is one pathway to it, and the other way is to work with a more experienced shaman who kind of initiates ceremonially the same kind of energetic shift. However, a lot of times those are kind of starting like a kind of an inner change that can also bring up a lot of turbulent feelings, and so it's not always an emotionally easy thing.
Mhm.
And it can kind of create an inner internal dissent, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
Or it can be in shamanism, there is what's called the shamanic journey. You can journey through altered consciousness to other realities and have that be part of the initiation
Right.
through descending down to the, for example, into the underworld, which
Well,
isn't which is not hell in the shamanic perspective. It's just a different dimension.
and the way that I had always seen initiation rituals is that they kind of frame your mind for the journey. It's more of a let's put myself in this mindset. I am a student and this is where I am. You seat yourself in a way. And by going through the initiation ritual and by participating in this thing, you've accepted that and that role. And because you've accepted that role, your mindset is different.
Hmm.
And that is what, that I think that more is more to the power of these rituals, these initiations than, just, oh, well, you're now part of this thing. I think it's more to the point. It's poof, you are a part of this thing. Not so much that you're a part of this thing now. Your mindset is now a part of this thing. You're in it. And those initiation rituals take you through this thing and put you into that mindset. All of those rituals or anything that you do for any of those types of spiritual practices, they're all a mindset. You usually have the different rituals that you do to begin. Be it in witchcraft or in Wicca, things like the calling of the watchtowers or whatever. In ritual magic, it's you're calling out to the elements of the four directions, whatever it may be. It's a preparedness. You're preparing your brain. And someone described what the Golden Dawn did like perfectly once, and they said that what they were doing was hacking their own subconscious, their own brains, by learning all of these symbols and understanding how all these things work. They were hacking themselves. And I thought that was brilliant, just a brilliant way to
Hmm.
look at it. And these initiation rituals, in a sense, are a way of hacking yourself and changing yourself. I
Well,
don't know.
right.
I don't, Holly. I don't know how this applies, but I'm gonna go with it. Okay. Kiss me where it smells funny.
Huh.
Okay,
That certainly sounds like that could be a initiation into something.
that could be.
It could be.
I don't know. I don't know what Bubby Blindy is, what gender they identify as, but
Now, are they talking to me or are they talking to you?
I don't know,
Or is
Holly.
it just like an
I don't know what
open?
this has to do with the topic at hand. I just thought that it should be addressed.
I
You
thought that was
know?
a very colorful icon avatar.
Yeah, they live. You gotta love that.
Yeah, yeah.
I kudos on the avatar. You know,
Right.
the they live avatar.
Top
The
notch.
comment, not so much. Not so much.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but yeah, all of these initiation rituals, I really do. I think that they're far more of a mindset. It's a way to get you into, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm a part of this.
mhm,
You're often brought in. You're welcomed into this thing. Um, and in the traditions that I had been a part of, which were all solitary stuff. I didn't
mhm,
do anything really in any type of a group besides like
mm,
talking with people.
mhm.
Um, but in ritual magic, everything is very stepped.
Right,
So you kind of like initiate yourself
right.
in a sense in that way, or you
Yeah,
can go through initiation rituals with groups.
right.
It's very, very flexible. And one
Mhm,
thing that I hated about certain uh, s- uh, uh, belief structures is they were just like, that, well, you can't do that on your own. Well, the fuck I can't, you know?
yeah, I
The
don't I don't necessarily believe that to be true either.
Right.
Um, I mean, I do agree that to a certain extent it is preparing your mind and helping your mind, one, adjust to transition and transformation,
Mhm.
and certainly ceremony helps you overall adjust into like different um life phases and changes in role or changes in group membership. I mean, my personal experience, and because I believe in a spiritual component, it is also a time where for me, it's been to interface with that spiritual dimension. Which I don't expect any of the people to agree with me on that. This is just my personal opinion and experience. Is that when I have been in having these initiation type of experiences, I have had a component where I have been interfacing with a non-physical um,
Entity.
entity or whatever my brain is interpreting as that. And that's kind
Right.
of the clause there, is like I can't establish for sure that that's what it is. It's how my brain interpreted my experience.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, this is what I've experienced and this is how my brain understands it as an experience.
Mhm.
um they've been personal, definitely a high degree of personal experience, even though I've worked with, in some cases, other people, um, when I've had these initiation moments.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, see, I never worked with anybody.
yeah.
Um Like I said, I did some. We would have like group discussions. There were a few of us who were kind of going down the same paths, so to
Mhm,
speak. Not necessarily the same paths, but very
mhm,
similar ones. And we would get together and we would talk and we would
mhm,
discuss things and so on and so forth. And it was a great way to learn a lot of things too. Doing it that way, there was a lot of
mhm,
discussion back and forth. I don't know, I was just not one to want to participate in these things in a group way. It just, to me, it
mhm,
felt very personal. All of these
mhm.
spiritual things felt very personal, and I didn't think that I needed to necessarily share them with anyone else. They were more mine.
Yeah,
Uh, so
absolutely.
and that makes a lot of people very jealous too. Like I would find like at the time, girlfriends especially would be
Mhm.
like, well, that's more important than me. And it's like, this is what I believe. Like this is, you can't allow me to have this thing for a short period of time.
Mhm.
Like, but it would just become an issue. And so I mean, back to the whole initiation thing. It takes you into something else, and you accept that when you participate in it. So by doing it, you're saying I'm going from being this person to being that person. Whatever that person may be. Whatever that label that you're purposefully putting upon yourself, because that's basically what you're doing. You're applying a label.
Yeah, so it is a denoting kind of a shift in where you kind of see yourself in the world.
Right.
Like I've had some initiations, they've come with some different sort of like classifications or titles. I don't share those with people because I don't think that really means anything to anybody but me ultimately, or people who kind of are familiar with the type of spiritual practice that I follow.
Right.
So I don't feel a big need to put it out there.
And I think,
um
and like I said, I think everybody's journey spiritually is personal.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to.
Hmm.
I think that there are people out there, and people should discuss things, but people should take their own spiritual journey. Yeah, I think that's more to the point of what it's all about, is finding that divinity within you.
Oh, absolutely.
That thing.
Well, yes, and I think it's about kind of, like you said, your own individual experience, and sometimes sharing those things with others because they haven't experienced it. They can't. It's not always so relatable, or you can't always convey how
And
profound it is.
it's not always helpful for you.
Right. So,
Sometimes it can be. Sometimes you can have a discussion with somebody about those things,
mm,
and that can be a helpful discussion, and it can bring you to another level. It can give you some form of enlightenment or understanding, whatever the case may be. But it's one of those what am I trying to say there? It's You can get there, sort of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Okay. You can
mhm.
get that information. You can do all that stuff. You can have those realizations, but then you have to put in the effort. This thing is it's like a merit badge. It's like a ceremony of getting a merit badge pinned on you. Same idea.
Yeah, sometimes it's more of a, all right, for me it's been okay, I'm going to accept that I'm going to kind of move forward in a certain way, and it's not necessarily a merit badge, but it's a kind of a
And merit badge
acceptance.
isn't even the
Yeah.
greatest analogy or metaphor, or whatever. I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. Because you've already done the work when you get a merit badge. This is
Yeah,
more
sometimes
of a
sometimes you haven't done the work, but it's like you're stepping into a new
right.
area of work
And then
or experience.
there are different levels of initiation as you go too. So that which are more merit based, I think.
Depending on what you practice,
Right,
or
correct.
what kind of, um if you're going down into, if you're investigating some spiritual paths, some of them are progressive and some of them are not, depending on what you choose to believe and experience.
I think I'm just gonna pick up a copy of the Necromonicon and just go with that.
Oh, oh yeah. Once you've done reading it, you're gonna put it on eBay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on eBay after I'm done reading. No, it's funny because the Necromonicon is a fictional work,
Right.
but people have bought that believing that they can go through those rituals.
Mhm.
That's fascinating to me. I knew a kid
Right.
when I was
Right.
younger
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
was firmly convinced,
Mhm.
and I was just like, I don't know, man. And back then, I didn't fully understand that it was a fictional book.
Mhm.
So, but later on, I realized, oh, it's work of fucking fiction. It was written by Lovecraft. Like this is horseshit. Um,
But in some regards, though, anything with some intention can become a ceremony and
oh
can
yes,
become,
oh absolutely,
and
yes.
then you can make it into your own personal
Mm-hmm.
initiation or your own personal ceremony. Um, and
I absolutely agree.
it could be something that someone has made up and you decide to adopt it, or it can be something that you completely make up on your own. And in part, this is how religions are started and spiritualities are started, is
Well,
because
one thing that I've said about when people would ask me what's the difference between what you do when I was practicing ritual magic and like Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or whatever the case may be, these normalized religions, I guess you would say we would call
Mhm,
them. and I would say that and I would say to them often that what I do is a more artistic form of prayer.
mhm,
I'm expressing myself in a different way when I pray than
right,
what you do or
right,
what someone like you does, and it's and I preferred it. It felt right. It felt
mhm,
personal. It
mhm,
felt uh, it gave me a sense of purpose.
mhm,
Um, and it wasn't so confined, and I didn't see it to be evil. It wasn't about like worshiping fucking Satan. It was just a goddamn belief structure.
right. Well, that's like baptism is essentially a initiation, and I'm speaking
Right.
about baptism in most Christian um, forms of spirituality is and basically an initiation ceremony and ritual where you are dunked in the water to H-ups, to under you know go some kind of transformation. You're now a different, changed in the status of the group. Um, so other things like communion are also types of initiation or
Yeah.
rites of passage that are practiced in that form of.
Well, again, they're rituals that put us into a mindset because obviously
Mhm,
the wafer is not the body of Christ, and the wine is not the blood of Christ. You take these things, you accept these things as a replacement. It's actually a form of magic. I think it's called thaumaturgy or something like that. I know I'm fucking that word all up, but it's a it in that you replace the thing with something else in the
right,
ritual,
right.
and it's putting yourself in that mindset. I'm taking these things of this holy being, this Messiah, into
Mhm,
my body.
right.
Taking that power. I
Mhm,
often wonder if Catholics understand the raw, and I say this and people will look at it the totally wrong way, but the raw power that comes with that, the idea of that symbolism that they're doing in that
mhm,
ritual,
right.
the actual power for themselves spiritually. And I don't think they do. I think it's a complete missed opportunity because I think they just do it, as
Mhm,
body of Christ, amen. They just
yeah.
go through the motions.
Yeah, I don't know because that's not what I practice,
Right,
but I
exactly.
but
But it is a
it's a totally,
powerful thing.
it is a, from from a point of view where you acknowledge that the no, it's a it's
From Shadow Mick, no, it's Lick a Toad that gives a gateway to Dream Quest. I don't know about the licking of the toad. I don't know if I'm gonna go with the licking of the toad. I think that might be some bad juju doing that. Pretty sure you got to scrape the toad, put it on glass, and then it's gonna be dried, and then you got to smoke it. Some shit like that is the proper way to do it. There, Shadow Mick. So stop. You know, if you're gonna explain how to do drugs on this show, you explain it the proper way, or don't explain it at all.
True.
This
Yeah.
has been the more you know.
The more you know. Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to that either. Other
Can't speak to that one.
Yeah, yeah. I have not used any kind of pharmaceutical or animal derived material to
or
induce
any hallucinogenic drugs.
Right, to induce shamanic trance. I have no problem doing it without the
Without the drugs.
without the drugs. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm good.
The drugs can be fun though.
So I'm told.
The drugs
So I'm
can be
told, and that is a
some fun.
really big thing is to do the ayahuasca.
Oh,
And
and I wouldn't go ayahuasca.
well, and it's a
Ayahuasca, I
big
think, is going too deep for people.
it's like an extreme purgative. It like makes you really sick,
Yeah,
and a lot of people don't want to go that extreme.
yeah, with the ayahuasca thing, I think that's some crazy shit people are doing. I think if you want to have a excuse me, I think if you want to have a deep call it shamanic journey or whatever, in that sense, mushrooms, peyote, all of which you can get here, and you can actually all the stuff to make DMT, I think, is here in the US. It's just it's weird, like how the laws are with it, and I don't know all the logistics. I know that like you have to boil like one plant with another plant because DMT itself will, if it just gets burned up in your stomach, but if you have an MAOI inhibitor in your stomach, that it
Yeah.
causes the body to be able to process it, and that's what makes you trip, is when you have the two together.
Right.
And they figured this shit out like ages ago in the fucking middle of the jungle.
Yes. Yeah.
But
which is pretty amazing because the dew plants that they use to make up ayahuasca don't grow in the same habitats.
right.
So
It's
like
just
that's
the whole thing's just kind of
amazing.
weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
Like, how did they come across this stuff? And
Yeah.
it gives you these amazing, potent, hallucinogenic, very far out. Like the people who talk about their DMT trips are, I mean, it goes far. Like they're like, I was talking to other beings and there's geometric shapes, and it's pretty deep. And I've had some pretty awesome experiences, spiritual experience, and I'll call them spiritual experiences on mushrooms.
Right. Yeah, that's a really common one. And in fact, there's a lot of like when you dig into the mythology of Santa Claus, that is going back to a prior like Northern European and like um like northern Russia, like
Yeah,
Eurasian
I think it's
continent.
the Amanita muscaria mushroom.
Yes,
It's
yes,
the
that's
red
it.
cap one. Yeah.
Yes, and that is a kind of that story with the like the flying reindeer is harking back to like kind of shamanic medicine men of early years, and that they extensively used um of that mushroom to have shamanic experiences. And in some kind, because it's slightly toxic, they wouldn't eat it, but they'd feed it to the reindeer and then drink the reindeer pee because
Yep.
the reindeer metabolized it a bit better. But they would wear these like red and white suits, which later evolved into Santa Claus. There's stuff on the internet about it, which it's the internet, so take it with a grain of salt. But it is kind of an interesting backstory to Santa Claus.
I gotta correct my producer here. Here, Holly. Katie, the burning bush story in the Bible was totally a DMT trip. That's very subjective. While I agree that a lot of the stuff that happened in the Bible probably had something to do with psychedelics, I don't know that the burning bush was a DMT trip. Joe Rogan had somebody on and they talked about it, and the amount of DMT that would have to be in the plant and for it to, have been that's what it was. It's not really viable. But I do believe that there was some tripping out going on back in the day. There's a whole idea that all of Christianity was based on a mushroom cult. There's a whole theory of that it was all a mushroom cult originally.
Yeah.
It gets pretty silly, but nobody knows. But to get back to the initiation rituals, it's interesting that all of these different belief structures have these initiation rituals to one degree or another.
Yeah, it does seem like human beings want to have some kind of ceremony to help at the very
Bring
least
somebody else into the tribe.
Yeah, or create a shift, or to recognize a shift where, like, going into adulthood. Or one that interests me, I've been doing some reading about, is this kind of the sexual rituals, which is like hierogamos, which is trying to create that shift into like sexual union in between the god and the goddess, and what that is all about, because that's a little one of these things that's a bit hush hush, but it's in that ceremonial realm and that kind of ritual realm, and what is going on with that.
I think that if used properly, like sex magic, or quote unquote sex magic, if people, because I think that's a huge issue with people, is their inability to do any type of open communication and exploration sexually. And a lot of these sexual rituals allow for that. They bring a lot of these things into the bedroom,
Right.
which create these, or can help to create these better bonds. I'm sure there's people who have practiced sex magic who have just been like total horrible to each other, but I mean, you could just, if it's used properly, it can be very fulfilling.
Well, right, and like there's that whole other branch of like yoga called tantra, which has gotten particular attention for kind of tantric sex and that kind of thing. But in a lot of times,
Sting,
right,
with his fucking what is fucking full body orgasm, like I keep an erection and fuck for hours and hours on end. And
well, right, because the point a lot of times is a prolonged pleasure rather than a mission.
Right.
So it's to see.
I completely understood what Sting was saying, but like men around the globe were like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Right, and so the intent is to, like, one, to achieve a lot of bliss, and two, to also use that energy as a way of kind of shifting your own personal energy or getting a new perspective on things.
Right. Well, in a way, in a lot of these ways, like it goes back to that mindset thing. When you're doing these things, and you're also being sexual at the same time, you're putting yourself in a mindset.
Right.
And you're purposefully doing that at a time when generally your brain kind of goes haywire. So at the same time, you're trying to have some form of cohesion in those really wild animalistic moments, and keep that, whatever that thing is, that ritualistic thing or ritual thing that you're supposed to do, and keeping that all in time. But it can be very powerful, both emotionally, I think spiritually, because I think if two people really get each other in that way, then those types of activities can only make things stronger and better.
Oh yeah, because there's
I do believe that.
a lot of like vulnerability and openness, and the minute there's a wound there, you kind of have to address that,
Right.
because you can't go any farther until you kind of address that wounding and talk about whatever that pain point is, and so that kind of like ceremonial intimacy kind of creates a, a time and a place to bring up those pain points and deal with it in a kind of like in a ritualistic way rather than in a more impersonal real life way, if that makes any sense.
Right. Well, what I think is that these things, they allow us ex, to explore ourselves sexually
Hmm.
when we're talking about those types of rituals.
Hmm.
And that, I think that's important. I think it's super important for people. Um, and I think that these types of rituals can be very powerful. Now, and again, this is coming from somebody who thinks that a lot of this stuff is very personal, and I like to keep it to myself. Um, but in the right tune, so to speak, two people can, to use a fucking stupid cliche, make really great music together. In this in that way, if you get what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I know what you're saying. And I think that, getting back to the initiation part of it is that sometimes there are there's symbology there, or and it can be between just two individual people, but there can be a sacredness and a ceremonial aspect to it, more so if you set the intention and it no longer becomes just a pleasure activity or a casual thing, but you set the intention of what you're going to do and bring ceremony into
Right, make it more, make it something more.
make it something more,
Right.
put some
Which
bigger
which
meaning to it.
which let's all be honest, like, that needs to happen in a lot of sexual relationships anyway. That where everything just becomes mundane after a while. It's just all fucking it's fucking eggs and toast, eggs and toast, eggs and toast, eggs and toast. you know? After a while, with a lot of people it is.
With a lot of
They
people.
they fall into those ruts. They don't try to go outside of anything. They just
Hmm.
get stuck in it.
Hmm.
And to explore, or to go to a different area to find that different mindset, would
Hmm.
be a good thing for them.
Well, right, and
And that doesn't
consider.
necessarily have to be sex magic, by the way.
Well, no, and it doesn't have to fall into any kind of specific, it's previously established belief system, but it is maybe putting some conscious attention and intention around exactly what you're doing. I mean, one of the things that I do notice is that there, if you're doing that, it makes it more difficult to accidentally create a new human being, because you are putting some consciousness around what you're doing, and the kind of ceremonial or spiritual aspect to it, and you know in that case you're probably making a decision to create a new being or not.
Right.
um and how different is that of an upbringing when you are consciously created versus when you're an oops.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think at the most people in the world, not all of them, but a good significant percentage of people in the world are fall more in the latter category of a unplanned creation or unplanned pregnancy, however you want to put it, versus two people very much coming together and saying, "All right, we're ready.
Right.
Let's try to make." bring a new life into the world,
Right.
and have the ceremony of that. Although there are some, on the internet, I've read some things where there are some like tribes in Africa where they start singing songs and imagining, um and doing some kind of ceremonial work before they conceive, and do that kind of sex magic, or like creative conception, which is its own different kind of a initiation where they're actually initiating someone into physical existence.
Right.
Yeah.
So the like the initiation is of the birth.
Yeah, or the conception.
Yeah.
It's like called like calling in the spirit.
So we got a comment, Holly. I
Oh
don't know
god.
if we want to weigh in on it. No, this one this one's actually pertinent.
Oh.
Sam Dallas. I mean, I don't know who Sam is, but we gave it a go.
Hi Sam. Yeah.
My wife of 30 years was wounded by the attempt. I mean, what'd you do, Sam?
We are still recovering 3 years later. Sexual
Sexual
energy
energy
can.
can backfire.
Wow.
What'd you do, man? I mean, did you try to give her the angry pirate while this was going on? I mean, fucking elaborate here, dude. You're just throwing us fucking. You're throwing us little nuggets. You got to give us the whole story, Bob. I don't know. Like I'm sure. I'm sure that those types of things can in some way backfire. Um, And I'm sure in some cases, like, you can find that maybe this isn't the person you were supposed to be with.
Well, right,
I
and I
think I
I
think
know.
I think if people neglect to look at the energy between the two of them sexually far more than people want to admit, that they just neglect to look at it and see it. They see, oh, this person's attractive. I should be attracted to that person. So that's it.
Right. Well, I can actually kind of slightly talk to some vaguely personal experience in this. Is that when I started to be, um, a little bit more true to myself and be more honest with myself, and kind of look into my spiritual belief system and what was right for me, I all of a sudden had this big shift that a lot of my life wasn't what I really wanted, and I was, um, engaged in a lot of things that was to make other people happy. And so
Hmm.
one of these things that can happen with an initiation, um, is that when you start kind of working on yourself and saying, okay, I'm going to be a better person and
Well,
I'm
you
going to
start
be more true,
understanding yourself.
and you start understanding yourself, all of a sudden have this awakening of, oh, things in my life aren't really what I want. And that can be the job, that can be the partner, that can be where you live, it can be your relationship with other people, including family members. And all of a sudden, you're in this place of reshifting things. And that is definitely something that happened with me. And in order to kind of go through this internal transformation, I had to kind of reestablish what was true for me on myself. And that this is part of that kind of underworld experience of looking at myself and really trying to get a better understanding of who I was and who I am, and then kind of correcting course, so to speak.
Mhm.
In which part of that was realizing that the person I was married to really wasn't the person I was happy with, and having to kind of go through those kind of experiences, which at the time weren't it that experience was not pleasant. And I'm not trying to like glamorize initiations in any extent, because in some ways it can lead to some initial, um, turmoil because of having to reconcile emotions inside yourself, like what would you really want.
Well, you have to address things within yourself a lot of
Absolutely.
times.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of the rituals that were in the ritual magic that I practiced, there were rituals for like cutting away these things. And they would tell you like these things, in doing this, it's not what you think. It's not like you're just not letting go of it. This is something that you have to address. It's not just this letting go. And you need to understand that as you're doing it. It's far more involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's been any kind of fakeness or lying to yourself about who you are,
Oh yeah.
oftentimes these kind of initiations will make you like really look in the mirror and be like,
Oh yeah.
you know, and this is where I would say this is more of an internal process
Well,
more
that
than
that's
anything.
one of the things that I realized more than anything about being an addict is is one of the biggest things that it taught me was you can lie to everybody on the fucking planet. You can lie to everybody,
Hmm.
and ultimately, I don't think it really matters. You start lying to yourself, and you just betray everything. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, you're betraying it. The minute you start lying to yourself, which is one thing that I had started doing, I was lying to myself. Oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. I got it all under control. I would do that. I'd do those rationalizations while at the same time going, dude, you got a problem.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, so it, it's those back and forth things. So,
Hmm. Yeah. But is that deception is
oh,
it can lead to a
it's a
lot of
real thing.
it's a real thing. It can lead to a lot of unhappiness because you're not actually meeting your true needs. And oftentimes a spiritual path, it doesn't matter which one you pick, will start to guide you to be um more honest with yourself
Yeah,
and lead you
because
in a better direction. For the most part, I would be wary of any spiritual belief that is telling you to believe something that isn't true for you. That
right.
might not be for you.
What's amazing is that some serial killers compartmentalize their dark side.
Hmm. Yeah.
So like there have been some of them, they talk about it like as if it's a different being, a different entity, and those types of things are just kind of weird to me,
Yeah.
because the
Mm.
one thing that's interesting is like when what I would notice, like when I was practicing ritual magic, when I would do those things, when I was performing those rituals or excuse me, doing my daily practices or whatever, there was a
Mhm.
mindset. You got into a mindset. So you would,
Right.
my mindset would change. So as
Mhm.
not so much a different person, but
Mhm.
there's a different energy about me when I
Right.
was there.
Mhm.
And you find that there too. Like here are these weird guys where they like there's a switch. Only
Mhm.
they have their normal life where they
Mm.
go to work, they have a job, sometimes maybe have a family, kids, and then when the switch is turned on, they're like strangling people and raping them and killing them.
Right. Yeah.
It's like holy fuck.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I get there's that weird switch like that would happen with me, and I'm not saying that that made me a fucking serial killer or anything. I'm just saying that that's kind of weird that they have that ability to like that switch.
Mhm.
Um, but I would see that in myself, and like I said, it goes back to that mindset. That these when you go through these rituals,
Mhm.
you're like when I would do ritual magic, there were basic rituals that you would do to like get into everything. So almost like an initiation into what you were doing for the day, or that
Mhm.
particular moment or time
Mhm.
or whatever the case may have been.
Mhm.
But you're getting yourself into that mindset,
Yeah.
and then you're performing a certain ritual because what you're doing that gets you into that mindset, which puts you there, and then you go into
Mhm.
this. It's very, like I said, it's very structured, very tiered.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like my experience is not with anything that is that structured or tiered, but I do think that sometimes doing a ritual or doing a certain ceremony will get your um kind of your brain or your brain waves in a certain energy pattern,
Hmm.
and that promotes a certain type of awareness. Um, there is different types of brainwaves, and most of us operate in, like, I think what's called an alpha brainwave state, which is
Mhm.
like kind of our alert and active, and then a lot of type of meditations and even dreaming are in other brainwave states. And a lot of times ceremonies will help your brain transition into these alternate brainwave states.
Right.
um, which, so there's some actual scientific explanation about what's going on with different states of consciousness. Your brain is actually functioning with a different type of brainwave state. Um, you know, so but where do you go with that? That is the next. That's kind of up to you how you choose to use your mental energy, or
Right, where
um,
you direct it.
where you
And
direct it.
I've always said I think that most of these things, most of these practices,
Hmm.
well, all of these practices actually, they're systems, and they can be used in whatever way you want to. If you want to use them to better yourself, perfect yourself, whatever the case may be, you know, become better at something. I think that they can do that for you. Any
Hmm.
of them,
Hmm.
if they're used properly.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that they can make one a better person and make one see the world differently and maybe start to see the forest for the trees in some cases. Realize your moments in the here and now and not getting so caught up in the rigmarole of everyday life and getting mowed over by it and
Hmm.
caught up in it and
Hmm.
taking those moments to smell the roses or see the sunrise or smell the fresh air.
Hmm.
Those are the important things that sometimes we just forget. We forget to just do it.
Well, I
That we
think
have these things.
sometimes in my experience is that I have gotten so caught up with the outer experience that I have neglected the inner experience. And I'm
Mhm.
so worried about what things are happening outside around me, different like work deadlines or commitments, or, things like bills, taxes. How am I going to feed myself?
Mhm.
That I have sometimes neglected the inner journey, where in a lot of ways, I've been so focused in the outside world that my enjoyment of the experience of being embodied here has suffered. And one of the things that my initiations have got me back to is a place of enjoying life as an adventure,
Yeah.
even though sometimes things haven't always felt, exciting or adventureful. And I have sometimes felt very depressed and not wanting to be here. But getting that reconnected to my true self and what my personal experiences and my journey and where I am on my journey has helped me get a better um, perspective on things and a better enjoyment of my own life.
Yeah, and people need to take time to do it. People need to take time to enjoy life, you know?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's so easy to get caught up in some of the negatives, and so many people are run down and um, unhappy or not living life to its fullest. And what if this is your one shot? And I know some people are born into circumstances that are really difficult, into poverty, into illness. um, you know how do you make the best of it? How do you and that's one of these big questions that I kind of wrap my mind about. And
Yeah.
it's hard, and I know it's hard, and everyone deals with it in their own way, in their personal way. And I got to the place where it's like, okay, well, this might be my one shot here. I've got to make the best of it. I've got to have my experience. Just been that back and forth of reconnecting with my through initiation with my kind of inner self, and kind of helps me be present when I'm here in my everyday life.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's what works for me. That is not necessarily what's going to work for someone else.
No, and that's why I say that it's all personal.
Absolutely.
For every person, it's individual. It's not, what's true for me is not necessarily true for you. So I say that
Absolutely.
a lot, and you'll hear it a lot on this show.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's 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 not an exact science because it's so personal.
Mhm.
And that's why I always had a hard time with people saying, "Oh, well, it's structured this way. You have to do it this way." And I was like, "No, I can just do it the way I want to, and it'll be fine." It's personal. It's my own.
Mhm.
Um, and I found my own truths through that whole thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
In going about it that way. But, um, you know, I recommend to anybody to at least do some delving, do some looking. If you've got questions, if you've got curiosities, and take a little bit of the journey. Go look. It's not going to hurt you to look. It's not going to hurt you to take a little look into what's going on and just see and get
Right.
some knowledge. You don't
Well,
have to take that leap and take that initiation ritual. You know,
well, that's true. I do think though that some other ways of thinking kind of discourage exploration because it might be bad or demonic or take
right.
people on the wrong path.
Well, you
And
just got that school system there. It was a religious school system. I mean, but that banned the Harry Potter books because they could summon demons. If you,
right.
if you think the fucking Harry Potter books are summoning demons, you are the one with the fucking problem. Just got to state that for the record. You're the fucking idiot. So,
Right,
I
where I'm gonna go is like anything, maybe take a look at what you're really afraid of. Like,
yeah,
is there a basis there to be afraid of something? And that happens with a lot of different things, that there is a kind of an air of something that's unwholesome, and is that really truly merited or not?
right.
Like certainly because I grew up in a very Protestant um Christian background, and growing up, the teachings that I got as a child were don't explore don't explore other types of spirituality. Demons could possess you.
Yeah, that's
Don't
bad.
It's bad. You'll not go to heaven if
Mm-hmm.
you do this, and it put me in a great big fear state. Um, Whereas when I got older and I decided, I was unhappy, and where I was wasn't working for me, and I explored and looked into a lot of different things, many, many different things, and I found something that felt right for me, and I was no longer in that fear place, which
Right.
in itself was very liberating,
Yeah. Yeah.
extremely liberating.
When you find something that makes sense and that starts to give you some answers to your questions, of course, it's a wonderful feeling. And like I said, I think anybody that has questions should definitely ask them. And it may be a journey you have to go on by yourself. You may not be able to take anyone with you on the journey, and that's fine too.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to, go down the path by yourself. It's going to get dark every once in a while, you know, but it's a journey, and that's how you have to look at it.
Yeah. This is Slip Into the Night after all. We talk about
Yeah.
the dark journey.
Yeah, the dark journey. It is the dark
Um,
journey.
and on the way, maybe other people in your life don't understand, but certainly you may actually meet people that do understand. I would actually wouldn't have met Chris if I had not gone on into my own dark journey and my own kind of spiritual um, kind of self exploration.
Mhm.
And I would have certainly not met many, many other people who have really brightened in my life as well.
Oh,
So
yeah, and
it's totally kind of expanded my life.
there's an old adage that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and I think that goes for just people that you need in your life as
Mhm.
well. Like,
Mhm.
it's just one of those old adages, um, I think it's kind of a great way for us to wrap this up.
Mhm.
Is the idea that I think a lot of times when you get on these journeys, the things that you need tend to fall into place.
Oh, absolutely.
And uh and I recommend it. If you, like I said, if you got the questions, ask them. What's it gonna hurt? What's it gonna hurt, Holly? What's it gonna hurt?
It's not, but I think some people do get inhibited by fear, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I absolutely understand being in that fear place because I was in that fear place probably for a good 20 years.
Yeah. I'm not saying you should go out and sacrifice a goat. Put a pentagram up. Flip crosses upside down. I'm just saying, go look. Go check some shit out. You'll be all right. Be all right. Dippy toe in. Dippy toe in. Come on, do it. All right.
um,
On that, on that fucking note, Ollie.
we're gonna slip on out of here.
This has been.
Are we gonna have an interdimensional journey to a hot tub someplace?
Slip into the night. Episode 5. Tantric magic in a hot tub. Me, Holly, and Bubbles. Bubbles will be the hooker we call.
Oh, whoa! You're making it extra spicy.
If you like this show, hit the
That
little
was
thumbs
like
up
the
button.
taboo episode right there.
If you don't, hit the little thumbs down button. Leave a comment, people. Subscribe to the 40 and Slip. As always, check out our good friends Matt Knapp at Bigfoot Crossroads and Cryptid Tales on YouTube. Check us out on anchor.fm/the 40 and Slip. Check out Phil Polling at youtube.com/Pair Breakdown.
Phil
And
Pulling.
as always, check out our good friend Dred Funn at
Dred Funn,
dredfun.com
yeah.
and youtube.com/Dred Funn. We will be back next week with another topic to stimulate your brain.
And maybe other parts.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.